I'm Marcus White, leader of Everyone is God, Britain's most visionary political party. I want to solve every problem in Britain, and I want to see everyone fulfilled. This is a podcast of hard questions. See me cross-examined. Do I have the answers? Do I really have a plan that works? Ask your questions and decide for yourself.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the Everyone is God political podcast. We had some technical issues earlier on, but we're going to get fired straight back in. We're going to start again. Marcus, how are you feeling? You feeling good about this?
I'm very good, Brad. Yes, we're going to do round two now and see if we can get through these technical problems. We're looking at social media today and the whole online environment, and should we regulate it? How far should we go with regulation? And of course, Keir Starmer's latest policy decision on this.
Okay. Let's start with the first question we had, Marcus. Is social media dangerous? And are the government doing the right thing by banning the children from going online, banning under 18, banning under 16s to going on?
So my view is social media isn't fundamentally dangerous. Yes, it has a part to play in things, but that is not the fundamental danger we need to protect against. I do support the new legislation that's coming out, but really only as a temporary measure. I don't think it's getting to the root cause of the problem. And I think the root cause of the problem is much more about the way children are brought up and educated, and whether they're brought up to be self-assured, stable teenagers who are able to discern, the difference between constructive information and information that's true, and discern that from false information and stuff that's harmful to them. So, we're very much, I think the root solution to this problem is to make sure that children are educated correctly to prepare for all of this, and they're parented correctly. So they're very self-assured, independently thinking people. And that is really where you need to go to parenting and education, to really to prepare children to deal with social media and, all the things that they're going to be exposed to in the world.
Okay, explain what this looks like, Marcus. You're Prime Minister now. We already know that there's parents out there that aren't responsible, don't bring their kids up with the best foundations. If you were in charge, how would your system work so that child is somehow given a schooling from your government, so to speak? Even?
So there's a whole load of things we would do. There's a whole raft of layers of protection here to solve this problem properly at its root. The first thing is that we would support parenting, so that we actually want to evolve society to a position where we actually pay parents to parent. So they've actually got the time to do it. You cannot parent your children if you're both working full time. It's physically impossible. And we have to face this problem because it leads to massive problems. And, this is why children are spending so much time on social media, because they're not getting that time with their parents and interaction with their parents. So that is a primary thing we would do. We also want to regulate parenting. We would also have extensive education through school and for adults about how to parent. And also in education, we'd have extensive education on teaching children how to discern truth and constructive information that they see online from false and harmful materials. So we have a whole multi-layered solution throughout all stages of children's development so that they're fully protected and able to discern what's good for them on social media, and also that they don't have susceptibility to to being corrupted by it in some way.
Yeah. So it sounds like you'd have some sort of curriculum in place as children start going into school, and where it kind of teaches them to be free thinkers.
Precisely.
Some parents might not like this, and some parents might see it as taking control over them. I see it as not everyone should be like, it shouldn't be a blanket thing where everyone, because most people do a really good job, look after their children. I feel
Yeah.
like it's the ones that aren't doing a good job, and that would be identified by some sort of, I don't know how it would work,
This is
but you,
this is can I interject
yeah,
there? This is an important part of our policy, and this is something that's very radical and probably will be very controversial. But we want to support and regulate parenting. So we would want social workers quite often go in after a new child is born to give new parents help. We would want to make sure that every family is visited regularly by a social worker to check that children are being brought up correctly. And I understand this is a very controversial idea, and there'll be a lot of people who will be like, this is none of the state's business. But we have to ask ourselves a very simple question. Do we want to protect children properly or not? It's just that simple. Now, we know for a fact, it's absolutely obviously true that there are children within all segments of society, lower class, middle class, upper class, however you want to frame it, from all
yeah,
walks of life who are mistreated in their childhood. It's universal across society. And let's say, for argument's sake, it's 10% of families. How do you find those 10% of families and make sure those children are parented correctly? Well, you don't know where they are. So you have to regulate every family. And I don't think this should be seen as a interference thing. I think it should be seen as a protection, a layer of protection, so that we know that children aren't being abused, that paedophiles aren't preying on them, they're not involved in paedophile rings. All these things that go on, they're not being abused in any way. You have to regulate to root this out. That there's no choice in this. So we've got a simple choice. Don't regulate and we'll have all the problems we've got. Or regulate it and you'll start to pick up more of them right at the first stage in childhood. And we know there's endless evidence that the people who end up in prison and carrying out criminal activity, most of them have had appalling upbringings. And you've got to root that out. So that is our position.
yeah. Yeah, it's a challenging one because it sounds so rational what you're saying. We children need to be given a better upbringing. Every child should be brought up with a decent, respectable upbringing. But I just don't know how this would look on paper, how you would enforce such a thing. I get a lot of questions all the time about some things you say about paying people. Let's just say paying people to look after their kids. People are saying, how on earth would the government pay for this at the minute? The
Yeah.
social bill at the minute is already sort of is. I know half of it goes on pensioners, but the social bill at the minute is already too much. How on earth are we going to pay parents to be at home and look after those
So
kids?
this is a very good question, and it's the right question, and there's a simple answer to it. Your investment in parenting, if you pay parents to parent their children, this will be the greatest investment you'll ever make in society. Because if you get your parenting and education right, what you'll have children that become very productive, law-abiding adults. When you have that in a country, your economy booms and your rate of corruption and crime plummets. So now you're spending far less money on policing crime and all the fallout of crime, the cost of crime, which is massive. It's billions, probably hundreds of billions if you
Yeah.
totaled everything.
That sounds like a loan, Marcus. It sounds like a loan almost. But so you're investing up front to in the hopes that we do the right things, we put the right things in place to pay off later on down the line. And I don't know how that would work structurally. Like because some people might say,
Again, it's a
oh,
really good question. Absolutely, you're hitting the issues right where they are. So you cannot put this into practice overnight. If I got into power at the next election, I could not say we are paying all parents to parent from tomorrow. Of course not. You're absolutely right. So this is like a 10, 20, 30-year plan. that would come in incrementally. But the first stage of it would start with education, changing the curriculum, which costs pretty much nothing. It doesn't cost much to change what you're teaching children. So straight away, that's one of the key areas where we would start. Changing the curriculum is a very minor cost. It's just the cost of some people working out a new curriculum. Rolling it out already happens. We teach in schools. You just got to teach them something different. And it would include extensive education on parenting and many other issues. So that investment there is absolutely minimal, but that will make a massive impact because it would change the consciousness of society. Later on down the line, that consciousness translates into money, savings. And those savings you can start to direct to things like paying parents to educate their children. When you do that, you get a positive feedback situation because now you've got spare money, which you're investing to create even more money. And you go round that circle. And this is how you build a fully functioning, self-regulating society.
Forgive me, Marcus, I've got to ask one more question about this. Would it look, because some people might say, we do child benefit already, we do these sort of benefits. Would this be, are you talking about an actual salary, a proper salary? And how much would you say, like, I don't know, like £2,000 a month? Like, what are we talking about?
So look, this is 20 years down the line. Our policies are radical. We want to completely restructure society. And the way we would build society is to place parenting as the most fundamental job in that society. So when you go through that process I've described over 10 or 20 years, you start to build up enough funds to pay parents a full salary as though they were working to parent. Because as we all know, any parent knows, parenting is more than a full-time job. It's a an 18-hour-a-day job. So that is where we would get, but you will not get there overnight. This is policies that take decades to put into practice. It's a complete restructuring of society around parenting as the most fundamental job. So yes, we would want to pay full salaries for parenting, just like they would earn out in the workplace.
All right, Marcus, let's go back to the online social media, government interfering, putting their beak in, telling us what we can and can't do. Are they trying to control? Is it dangerous? Is it a dangerous state to be where the government can start controlling exactly where we go, what we're watching, what we're looking at? There's talks. I saw a video today of them trying to enforce some law where they could incorporate AI to sort of check messages that are being sent from everyone's phone. So there's a whole load of stuff. Some people are sitting there. Some people are worried. Some people are worried that maybe we're giving too much power and strength to the government.
Again, I think it's a really good question. So our view is this. We believe a fundamental job of government is to regulate any area of society that is critical to the way society functions, with a view to creating a constructive, law-abiding environment for everybody. Now, we believe there should be total freedom of speech, but with 3 boundaries.
Sorry, you're back.
Oh, we had a technical then. Your phone hasn't overheated again, has it?
No, it wasn't the phone. It was a VPN issue. The VPN, for whatever reason, just reset itself. And when it does that, it switches out. But for the purpose of technology, we'll get back into it,
No worries. So we support total freedom of speech, but with 3 boundaries. The first boundary is that everybody speaks the truth. The second one is that you always have evidence. If you're going to make negative statements about people, you have evidence for it. And the third one is that everything is respectful, kind, and constructive. My party is passionate about living in a society that is kind and respectful and truthful and evidence-based everywhere, on all media, on all television, in public, in private, everywhere. We believe in good manners and respecting people, and we want to put this in law. So we believe in total freedom of speech, but with those three boundaries. And, you know, we were talking about this, an example of what our position is. So we've had Nigel Farage saying that he believes people should react with pure cold rage to the police handling of the Henry Novak murder. Now, our view is that that is unconstructive. And if you're encouraging people to respond to an event with pure cold rage, rage leads to violence. I don't think anybody can deny that. So as an influential person, if you're encouraging somebody to respond with pure cold rage, you're one step away of encouraging them to respond with violence. That's the next step. In my view and my party politics, we would make that statement illegal because it's not constructive. It's inciting rage, which leads to violence. So we would put this into law. And in our system, if Nigel Farage said that and I was Prime Minister and we had our law in place, he would be committing a crime. And at the very least, he would have a hefty fine for it.
Yeah. And I think Keir Starmer is really on the verge of really enforcing some action like this, because this is undoubtable. There's no debate here. You've got a politician standing up and telling people, and which we now know half of these people are repeat offenders, criminals, people with domestic violence charges. These are the kind of people that don't need any excuse to go out and commit their heinous acts. When you have a politician, this is why sometimes I looked at Nigel Farage's eyes and I see someone that's just... He's playing such a dangerous game, and it's just like, Nigel, what are you doing? Because you were brought up in a good education. You know, we know for a fact Nigel Farage isn't going to go out and act with no rage, is he? He's going to go have a lovely wine, he's going to have a lovely dinner, he's going to go to the country clubs. He's not going to act like this. The only people that are going to throw their lives away are young men with anger issues, childhood problems, and these are the worst kind of people, because these people, in their mind, they have nothing to lose. So, you know, we need politics to start taking a better step, because where do they want it to go? Where do they want it to go?
I think it's a very important issue. You see, one of the things we would teach, we'd ask a simple question of the people of Britain. You know, do you think, if you're given two outcomes, so the two reactions, the first reaction is where people react calmly and objectively, looking at the facts when they assess situations. Do you think that scenario, or the scenario where people react with pure cold rage, which scenario, which scenario do you think is going to come out with the best outcome? Well, we would always say, you know, a calm, balanced, objective assessment of facts will always give the best outcome to try and work out what is the root cause of this and the solution to it. You know, so if that is what you believe, then vote for me. If you believe pure cold rage is going to give you the best outcome, then vote for Nigel Farage. It's just that simple. You know, what sort of country do Britons want? What do they believe is the best course of action? I know what we believe in my party.
Yep, and sometimes, you know, you just you just can't help some people sometimes, you know, and, you know, I think, Amanda, two-tier policing, Nigel was right. These are the kind of things that you get, unfortunately, online. And like I said to you, Marcus, it seems like I'm playing checkers. Seems like I'm playing Snap with some of these fellas on Facebook at the minute. They come in, they say all different types of things. I pointed the stats out that 50% of, especially in the Southport riots, more than 50% of them had convictions. Like, these people were criminals, domestic violence people. These are the same people saying they want to protect women and kids out on the street. It just seems to me that there's a horrible, like, Marcus, what could make a politician, an educated man, stand up and tell the public, seeing what's going on, people being attacked, police officers being attacked? Put yourself in that person's mind. What could make a politician come out with a statement like that, act with pure rage when police officers are being attacked?
So it's another really good question. And my answer will be one of the answers you hear from me over and over again. This is psychology. Nigel Farage is being driven by what is going on subconsciously in his psychology. He has not been trained in psychology, and he does not understand how influences in his childhood and throughout his life have caused him to have a viewpoint which is destructive. He doesn't have that level of consciousness. And he's been driven by some events in his past life where he's developed these sort of angry approaches to problems that aren't thought out. And this is exactly what my party wants to unravel in everybody, because this is in all of us. It's in me, it's in you, it's in everybody. None of us react perfectly to anything. And we need to understand the whole psychology of why we react in the ways we do, why we form these beliefs, beliefs where people think rage is the best response. You have to unpick the psychology of this. You see, this is why you'll never solve political problems with politics. Nigel Farage proves this. You can only solve political problems by resolving human nature, understanding human beings and why we say these things and do these things. And that is the realm of psychology. And that is where you have to go to solve these problems. So we want to give people this much greater awareness of themselves so they understand why they're being driven to say these things and do these things and burn houses down and all the stuff we do.
Yeah, Marcus, this sounds, I think this, could it be, Marcus? I do get it, you're very big on psychology. You're very big on it, you have your you have your opinions on it.
Yeah, you're going to hear it over and over again.
Could it be that someone is literally just sold out, and like we know that there's a lot of money in politics? Could it just be that someone's been given money to push an agenda? Could that not just be? Could it not just be simple? We call it selling out.
Let's drill down into this a bit more, and just so this is speculation about Nigel Farage. I've never met him, and I want to be clear with this because I'm not keen on speculating about people that I know nothing about except what I see in the media. But you've asked the question, so I don't think his motivation for this is money, because I don't see how he will financially profit from the statements he's making. I'll tell you what my guess would be psychologically what his motivation is for his statement. So part of the reason people make statements such as this is because of insecurities within themselves. They're feeling insecure about the process of gaining people's votes and being successful in their political agenda. So Nigel Farage is demonstrating signs of insecurity. He is not fully confident in his policies to the point at which he starts having to grasp at more questionable strategies. And I think what he's done subconsciously is make a calculation that if I say this, it's going to attract the votes of a considerable portion of Britain who, are more white orientated and against immigration, that whole segment of society. And he's done a calculation that if I say this, I'll get those votes, and those votes will be enough to get me into power.
Yep.
So, I don't think it's money motivating this. I think it comes from his insecurities, where he is not confident enough in his policies just to speak the truth. Yep. And he's grasping at more questionable strategies to manipulate people to vote for him.
Yep.
That's the psychology of what's going on here.
Stacey, he's a criminal, £5 million from his friends for Brexit. And let me just dive a little bit into the facts of this case. Initially, Nigel Farage came out and said that he didn't declare this because it had nothing to do with politics or anything like that. In a recent interview, as recent as 2 weeks, I believe, Nigel Farage came out and said, I've worked 27 years in politics, and I was given this money as a personal gift for my work that I did with Brexit. Now that is two conflicting answers that he's given. First of all, he says that he didn't declare it because it was a personal gift, had nothing to do with politics. 2 weeks ago, he says it was a gift for his hard work and pushing for Brexit, getting Brexit. So, I mean, what can be drawn from those conclusions there, Marcus?
Again, we're in the realm of speculation, and I'm not keen on speculating on other people because I don't believe in it. But based on what you've said, and I haven't researched this because my focus is not to go around finding out about all the other parties and their politicians. My focus is on my party and our policies and what we think will solve problems. But based on what you've just said, Brad, contradiction always indicates that there's something going on. If people contradict their position, it means they're not comfortable within their position generally, and there's something they're trying to divert attention away from. Donald Trump changes his position all the time and contradicts himself. It just shows that there's something going on underneath where they're not confident in their position and clear on what that is. And this raises suspicion. So I don't really want to speculate much beyond that because, like I said, I passionately believe, and we're going to get onto this, and not speculating about people when you don't have the evidence.
Yeah.
And I'm not interested in getting in the mind of Nigel Farage. That's not my job. I'm here to lead my party and speak the truth about us. And I'm not concerned so much about other politicians because I'm not in their parties and I don't represent them.
Yeah. I think here's where I stand on that. I get that totally from yourself, not wanting to speculate, but there are people generally in fear for their life right now. This is a man that has real influence over, you said white politics. We can just call it far right kind of receptible people to sort of, dog whistly kind of chats or whatever. There are people that don't have the luxury of thinking that because they're worried about being attacked in the streets. You've got someone that could be the next prime minister if you don't get in, Marcus, calling for pure rage. If this man gets in power, what kind of, like we were talking about dictatorships the other day, you're talking about this, that I think if Nigel Farage got in and he continued this rhetoric, we could be really looking at severe consequences. People like race riots, race wars, because it will only take, like at the minute it's to calm, but it will only go too far where people of color say, you know what, we're not going to be attacked. We'll start fighting back. And with a prime minister like someone like that, so I feel like we have to sort of maybe give a little bit of because there's real consequences.
So let me respond to what you said. I agree with you 100%. So like I said, I spend very little time studying what other politicians say because I don't believe there's any merit in that. I'm here to represent my party, but this is a very important issue, and I think your assessment is correct, okay? If, based on the small amount of information I have on Nigel Farage through the media, what he demonstrates to me is a number of very concerning problems.
Yeah.
The first of which is what we've been talking about. He believes in responding with rage to events, and that is one step away from violence. So this is extremely concerning. If a man gets into power who has that belief, then they're very liable to encourage violence or war or whatever. The second thing is that when you make statements like he has, this is very divisive. It pits different groups of people within Britain against them. It increases division. And I believe this is very dangerous. Like you're saying, no politician should ever increase division between the different groups in society. A fundamental part of any balanced leader is to always, always, always encourage unity and understanding of every part of society amongst every other part of society. So we all understand everybody's viewpoint and their place, what they bring to the country. So that's the second point. And I think what you said is correct, Brad. When you see somebody, Nigel Farage is representing himself and his party and his beliefs. And my assessment of that is a man like that, if he gets into power, he's going to he's saying, I'm going to cause these problems with rage and violence and maybe war, and problems with dividing society and pitting different groups against each other and increasing conflict rather than unification. That, to me, is a very dangerous leader. And it's someone, this is how a democracy changes into a dictatorship. It's the first stage of the path from democracy to dictatorship. We've seen exactly this in the United States. If Donald Trump was able to stay, he'll have to come out of power at the next election out in the United States. If that wasn't the case and he was a bit younger and he believed he could get elected again and he managed to negotiate more power for himself and change their constitution, Donald Trump shows all the signs of going towards dictatorship.
We got a question, Marcus. It's kind of generic, I suppose, to do with what we're talking about today. Does government influence over content moderation protect society, or does it suppress free speech?
Okay, so I think it's a really good question. You see, there's the issue of freedom of speech is one of the most confused issues across the planet. You can say anything you want about anybody in a way that is kind, respectful, and truthful and evidence-based. But as soon as you stray outside of those boundaries, you're not really in the realm of free speech, and that's not your purpose. Your purpose is for hate, division, and some other agenda. And, you know, in my view, my politics is that we should have laws in place to make sure everything is polite, respectful, truthful, evidence-based.
Yep.
And consensual. So, for example, if somebody wants to put up an AI generation of somebody who's famous, that should be illegal unless they've been given permission to do that. You should not be able to falsely represent somebody else without their permission. So, to me, freedom of speech is the simplest thing ever. You're free to say anything you like as long as it's kind, respectful, truthful, and evidence-based. And there it is. But people seem so confused on this because they want to do other things with it. They want to vent their anger with speech. They want to falsely accuse people of things that they've got no evidence for. They want to wildly speculate about people. They want to push their agendas. None of that is the realm of free speech. It's the realm of manipulation. And free speech should never be manipulation. So it's very simple for me, this issue. But, you know, people don't tend to see it like this. I think there's just huge confusion on this.
This is the thing. When I speak to you, Marcus, like I say to you, I'm like, these are fully grown men that I'm speaking to. I'm presenting facts to them about certain stuff, and they still can't see it. Something as simple as like, you know, white people commit crimes too. Why don't you react the same way when white people commit crimes? And they'll literally act like big babies. Like there has to be some sort of sulky comment. So it's either that they're doing it on purpose. You know, it's very big business. Like, unfortunately now, if you play the far right song, you dog whistle on social media, black person does this, Asian person does this, Asian person, Muslim does this. You know, if you play that role on social media, you will be rewarded with hundreds of thousands of pounds. This is the carrot that's being dangled at these people. And sometimes I've looked into the faces of some of these people on social media. I've seen them, like, you know, they're grifters. They're there for the money. So we'll slightly move on, Marcus. But we've got one more comment. I'll just pop it up on the screen at the minute. Lovely girl, the lovely Fiona. Is it acceptable for the government to shut down social media platforms during a crisis? So, you know, like this Northern Ireland riots, a lot of people are using
Yeah.
social media to sort of project their anger and stuff. Would you if you're Marcus, you're prime minister, and a situation has happened that has the potential to escalate, and you see what's happening on X, where this stuff is just being the trumpets being blown, would you be in favour of the government
So
shutting the platforms down?
my position on this is very clear. If it seemed like there was a need to shut down social media in a crisis, this immediately tells you there's massive structural problems in the way social media is regulated and your society. That's what it tells you if that need arises. It tells you that you've got a social media that's unregulated and people are just wildly saying whatever they want. And
Yep.
it also tells you throughout society there's a significant groups of people who want to inflame and agitate and cause problems, you know. And if you've got that level of problems in society, then you need to do all the things we're saying. You need to go back to, you've got to recreate society. So do you see what I'm saying? If, you know, if a government has to shut down social media in a crisis, you've got major problems, structural problems in your society that you need to resolve. That's what that's telling you. And you've got to go right back to the drawing board and say, how do we reconstruct society so we don't have to do these things? And that's exactly what my party is about.
Yeah. So is that a yes or no, Marcus? Let me put you on the spot. Would you shut down? Would you be in favour of shutting down X in the moment in a period of a crisis, like where
No,
it's just
no.
blowing out of
Our,
control?
our, our approach would be to have regulation on this, that people cannot, it's illegal to misinform. And in our system, again, we're going to get onto this.
Yeah.
In our system, these people would either be fined heavily or end up in prison, depending on the level of influence they have and what they're, you know, inciting people to do, how violent they're suggesting people should become.
Okay.
That's what my response would be, an authoritative response to
I
it.
suppose we'll draw to the end on this. We're drawing to the end on this conversation. But Marcus, you're in power. Everyone is God. Political parties in power. What would be your approach in regulating social media, the online environment?
So there's a number of key points here. The first thing is accountability. You cannot regulate a system if you don't know who is commenting and putting up these posts. So the first thing is, if you want accountability through society, you need to make sure everybody who goes on into the online environment and social media has a digital signature of some digital ID of some description, which means they're immediately traceable to the comments that they make on social media. So that's the first step. So they're immediately accountable. The second thing is we would make it law that anything that is said, if you're claiming something, you'd have to claim your source of that and your evidence for it. You can't just wildly negatively speculate without any evidence. We would put that into law and people would get prosecuted if they say things on social media that are untrue and have zero evidence for it. If there's evidence for something, they can say what they believe and state their evidence, factual evidence. So we would make that law. The third thing, as I said, we would make negative speculation illegal, because negative speculation has no evidence. I mean, speculation when there is no evidence. So we would make that illegal. You can't say, I think this politician is corrupt. Well, what is your evidence for that? I don't have any. I just think they're corrupt. Well, I'm sorry, no evidence means no valid opinion on this. You can't just wildly speculate. We would make that law. It's a basic thing that you should not have the right just to negatively speculate about people when you have no evidence for it. It destabilizes society and it builds mistrust amongst people, which does not have a good outcome.
Can I interrupt there, Marcus? How far would you go with that? How far would you go with that in terms of scolding, punishing people? Because let me just give one example very quickly.
Yep.
One of the main reasons that we went to the Iraq War, I can't remember what newspaper did it, but there was an article, I still remember to this day, the famous article, Iraq has weapons of mass destruction, they can attack us within 40 minutes. You know, where would you go? Like, would you...
Very simple. So this is really good point, Brad, because in that case, in our system, we would have much greater transparency. So if the government made the statement, we need to go to war with Iraq because they have weapons of mass destruction, they would have to place their evidence for that statement. And here's the problem. You see, where is this evidence? At what point was it presented to the public? In my system, there would be much, much greater transparency throughout all of society and including government. And in my system, all government decisions that affect anybody throughout society would have to be transparent. The evidence for that would have to be laid out in a public document. So literally, what would happen is, in my system, if Tony Blair or whoever it is makes that statement, we're going to war with Iraq because they've got weapons of mass destruction, they'd have to present their evidence. If they can't present it, he would be guilty of a very, very serious crime. Starting a war without good reason, a very serious crime. And in my system, he would be in jail if he couldn't provide that evidence, probably for life. That's what would happen, because this is the thing, okay, when you've got to match your authority system with the level of responsibility you have. When you're prime minister, if you want to take a country into war, by God, you've got to have your facts straight to do that. And you need to lay them out publicly. So if he laid out documents that our secret agents in Iraq have been to these specific locations and observed these weapons, and on that basis we are going to war, then that is completely reasonable.
Yeah.
But when that just completely breaks down and when he's actually questioned on it, there is no evidence. This is a vast crime. It's similar to what Putin's doing with invading Ukraine.
Yeah.
That is my position. It's very stringent. This is a complete change in the consciousness of society. It's self-responsibility and accountability at all levels, personally, right up to the Prime Minister.
Wow. So if you got into power after Marcus White, everyone has got a political party, was after Tony Blair, you got in power and you found out that he had lied, which he actually came out recently and made a public apology. He said he got it deeply wrong. And all these deaths that we've had, all our British soldiers, all the American soldiers, everyone that's fought in these wars, he's able to come out and say sorry. And the cheek of it, there's actually rumours of him actually wanting to take some part in taking part in control. I think it's Gaza. I believe they're trying to put like a sort of some sort of government in place there where he's going to be the leader of it. And yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, if I got into power, I wouldn't retrospectively be going after people, because you can only, obviously, it's a principle of law. You can only prosecute people for current law. You can't go back retrospectively. You can't pass new laws, which then go back retrospectively to convict people of crimes under the new law. You can only convict people under current law. So there wouldn't be a retrospective hearing for this, because I don't think there's a system of law in place to make it properly a crime. But it should be. And this should be an absolute principle of all governments. Governments should be held accountable.
Yep.
And every decision they make, as you know, if it's possible for their decision to be evidence-based, then they must always lay out the evidence for their decision. You know, there's certain decisions, you've got to be careful with this, because there's certain decisions government have to make which are speculative. They don't have the information. It's like with COVID. I think with COVID, we don't know how the pandemic is going to progress and the implications of it and what the best course of action is, because this is a new situation for the world. So I think you've got to be balanced in this, and you can't prosecute people when there isn't very obvious facts and very obvious correct responses to them. But if, like I say, in the case of Tony Blair, if he says we are going to war because they have weapons of mass destruction, then he's got to have the evidence. He's put himself in that position straight away.
Yep.
So he has to be held accountable for it in our system.
Yeah. I'll let you finish your points on the last bit.
So the fourth thing is balance. When you speak about any subject, and you've been touching upon this through this podcast, if you speak on a subject and you say, oh, this person from this group committed this crime, you're focusing on an individual crime. As you've pointed out, you must always focus on a balanced view of things and what is the general statistics over society of that problem. If you pick out these very emotive single events and base decisions on that, this is never a good thing. And I know this is already in regulation of media, and particularly mainstream news like BBC, ITV, etc. They have to present balanced reporting on events and contextual balance to it as well. What is the context of this? How big a problem is this? What are the statistics? We would want more legislation on making sure that everything that's said is balanced representation of the truth. So that's the fourth thing. Fifth thing, respectfulness, kindness, constructiveness. We would legislate for this. If you say something, it should be for your own and benefit of society at large. And if somebody wants to make statements that clearly are divisive and destructive and hateful, again, this should be illegal. There's no constructive purpose in that for anybody, and it should be illegal, and it is not an infringement of free speech. Anything can be said in a polite, respectful way.
Yep.
And then finally, our enforcement of this would be much more stringent, because people who commit smaller acts of, where they break these boundaries, then they would pay fines. And this will fund the criminal justice system. And if they're more extreme, they'll end up in prison. And prisons in our system ultimately would be self-funding. So we'd enforce all of this strictly.
Yeah.
This is very radical.
Yeah.
But we believe this is how you create a law-abiding, constructive, happy society for everybody, where everybody feels safe, they're respected, work is less stressful because everybody's polite and constructive. The online environment is a much more pleasant place for everything. This is what we want to create, a much more constructive, polite, happy society.
Yeah, I would speaking to you, Marcus, at the very start of our journey, you telling me a little bit about your party and your principles. Transparency is so key. Even if the people can't handle it, just tell us what's going on. And punishment for people that are out here just doing what they're doing for money. There are people struggling with their finances now. And they might be leaning a little left, leaning a little right. They might be a bit unhappy with their life. And therefore, literally anyone can do this. You can go on social media, go on X, and create a massive following. Call yourself Patriot Marcus. British Bulldog tattoo on your face on a VAR, an AI sort of thing, and now you're a patriot. And then you can post all your stuff and get it out there. I feel like we just need some sort of punishment for this. But Marcus, we've got one more comment before we rock and roll out of here. From
Can I
Paul.
just say, Brad? We'll take this comment, but can I just interject there? So, I think we're almost like in an age of like the Wild West in the States with our online environment. Mm-hmm. I don't think the world yet has realised. We're sort of in the whole gunslinging stage of the internet. It's still a fairly new phenomenon. like 20, 30 years old. And humanity hasn't cottoned on yet that it's just the Wild West. It's a completely unregulated, out of control zone. This whole consciousness needs to change. And, I think this is the evolution we all have to go on. We have to make sure the online environment is a pleasant place to be.
Yep, and something drastic has to be done now.
Yeah, before you've got to legislate on it.
We're seeing people's houses being burnt down right now as we speak. Probably right now as we speak. It's got to red. We're at red level at the minute. We need. Keir Starmer needs to either he needs to step up the ban thing for under 16s is good. It comes in within 6 or 7 months or something. But I think he needs to attack these social media giants ASAP with their misinformation and spreading it the way they are. Right,
So
Paul.
let's take Paul's question. Should users be notified when government directives affect their posts? Yes, absolutely. And it should go further than that, because this is the thing. In our education system, people would have extensive education on exactly how to express themselves in the correct way. So they discern between evidence-based and not evidence-based. They discern between what is polite and what isn't. They are taught how to express dissatisfaction in a reasonable way, constructive way. And they're taught about, how to tie what they're saying to evidence. So we would educate for all of this. And then, yes, what in our system, you see, what would happen is if anybody posted online and say they're saying something that's unsubstantiated, there's no evidence for it. So we would just encourage people, anybody who wants to, there'd be a button built into all social media, report this. It would go straight through to the authority, and so it'd go through to a department, if you like, of the police force who are policing the online environments. They would look at the comment, and then because our system, they'd be accountable. They'd be able to contact the person immediately who made that comment. They'd then simply ask a question of that person. Can you please submit your evidence for the statement you made? If there's then no evidence for it, and it was negative speculation about somebody or hateful or whatever else, then they've now committed a crime. They've made a statement that has no factual basis whatsoever, and they've misrepresented somebody. So they've now committed a crime. They would then be fined, minimum. That fine would more than cover the costs of the investigation of the case. So if 100,000 people want to go online and comment and say, this guy's the worst person ever, and there's no evidence for it, then 100,000 people would be paying a fine.
Wow, and I think that'd be a really good way of doing it. I think ultimately it has to become that way, and I think that's where we're leaning to anyway. But this draws us to the end, guys, and it also draws us to our next show on Thursday, guys, on Monday.
That's right, on Monday.
Monday.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there, I'm just confused.
Today.
Yes, indeed.
Monday, 1 o'clock. So
Monday, 1 o'clock, we're going to be... Marcus, you want to tell us about the show?
We're talking about the prison system and how to reform it. And we have, again, as always, very radical policies on this. We want a prison system that's 100% authoritative and 100% rehabilitative. So anybody who comes out of prison is fully ready to enter back into constructive society. So we're going to be talking all about how we propose to achieve that on Monday at 1 o'clock.
Sounds fascinating, guys. Make sure you join us on Monday, 1 o'clock. Prison reform, the prison system, and the whole crime and punishment. Maybe even looking at the sentences. Maybe we can pick 1 or 2 cases, Marcus, as well, and we can maybe review the sentencing on that.
Yes, I'd love to do that.
All right, guys, thank you very much for coming in with your questions, guys. I know a lot of you are my loyal guys. Thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you for their questions.
I appreciate you guys. Guys, have a lovely day. Go out and get some sun, and we will see you on Monday, guys.
Thank you everyone for watching. I'm Marcus White, leader of Everyone is God, Britain's most visionary political party. Subscribe to us on YouTube or visit our website if you would like to find out more and get involved.